So I'm going to create two different videos for pop. In this one, we're just going to go through the logic of it, the steps that we would have to go through to create a pop method. In the next video, we'll actually go through how to code that. It's a little bit more complicated method than push, and we'll see why here in a minute. So with pop, we're just going to remove the item from the end, move tail over to the previous item, and return the item that we removed. So we do have a couple of edge cases. The first edge case being that we might have a linked list that does not have any items in it, and obviously we can't pop something from this linked list. But the other edge case is if we have one item, and we'll go over this in some more detail in the coding video. But if you want to try to code this, understanding that these are our three scenarios, we might have a list with some items in it, one with no items, and one with one item. You have to code for all three of those scenarios. You can pause the video here and try to code this. Otherwise, I'm going to go into some more detail about what we have to do the pop method. So I'm going to bring our items back here. And when we move tail over to the previous item, this is a little bit more complicated than moving it the other direction, because you can see in the linked list, all of the arrows are pointing to the right. We're moving tail to the left. But once we've done that, it's pretty simple to return this item. So let's bring this back and look at what we have to do to make the tail move back one. And in order to do this, I'm going to convert this from the graphical way that we're looking at this to looking at this as nested objects. So we are going to have tail point to the previous item, and then we'll say tail.next is equal to null, which removes that for node, and then we can return the for node. So let's bring everything back to the way it was, just like this, and look at what we have to do to make tail move up to the previous item, because we want to have it point here. Well, we need to set it equal to something else that points to this node, and the only thing that points to this node is the next value in the previous node. The only way to get to this node is by the next value in this node, and so on, and so on. And this is why we have to start at the head and then iterate through this until we get to this node. Once we've done this, we can have tail set equal to that, and that moves tail up. But we have to iterate through the entire list to make that happen. And that's why a pop is an O of n operation, where push is O of 1. And once we have moved tail up here, we can say tail.next is equal to null, and then remove the node. So now let's put this back in graphical format like this. So how do we keep track of the node before the end? So the way we're going to do this is we have two variables, and I'm going to call them temp and pre. Temp is going to be the variable that once we iterate through this list is going to be pointing to that last item that we return, and pre is going to point to the item that is next to last. In other words, pre is going to point to the 7 node, and then we're going to set tail equal to pre. So for now, I'm going to remove head and tail. I'm going to move pre underneath here so it's a little easier to look at. And what we're going to do is we're just going to iterate through the list, and we're going to say temp.next, and that's going to be that arrow off of the 11 right here. If temp.next is pointing to another node, in other words, if it's true, then we're going to say pre is equal to temp, and in the first iteration it already is. And then we're going to say temp equals temp.next, which moves this over. And then we're going to do it again. Is this point to a node? Then we're going to have pre move up, temp move over. And again, until we get to the end of the list. Now this is going to be the last time we move these up, where we have pre move up, temp move over. Now this is going to be equal to null, which equates to false. Temp.next is now false. It stops our loop. And this is where temp and pre end up. So for now, I'm going to remove temp. I'll bring this back in a minute. And then we're going to say that tail is equal to pre. And the only thing we were using pre for was to be able to set tail equal to it. So we're done with that. And then we say tail dot next is null, which removes that last item. And I had mentioned that we're going to bring the temp variable back. It was pointing at this node. And then we return temp. So that walks us through how to do the pop method. And this is for if we have a bunch of items. Obviously, it's going to be very easy to write the code for if we don't have any items. If head is equal to null or length equals 0, however you're going to measure that, we just say return undefined. And then the more complicated one is going to be if you only have one item, how is it that you're going to write the code for if you have one item? Because that is one of our other edge cases. But that is how we're going to solve the pop method. And in the next video, we're going to pick up from here and we're going to code this.